Such a pleasure anytime I'm joined by Peter King. Peter, it's great to catch up with you. The last time I saw you, I was at the NFL owners meetings in downtown New York. I want to say maybe a year ago at this
Year
point.
ago, yeah.
A year ago. I saw you there. I was there with CNN strictly for the purpose of trying to get Roger Goodell to tell me anything about what was going on with Dan Snyder at the time.
Yeah.
And I know you remember.
Shame of Daniel Snyder, the Carolyn Manno beat.
There were protesters in the lobby, and I remember, stopping Jerry Jones and having him tell me that he was for Daniel Snyder, that everything was going to be fine. Turns out this thing hasn't gone away, and now there are rumors and speculation that a sale could be in the works. What's the latest that you're hearing about what's going on in Washington?
Well, he announced last week that that he was open to selling. I'm assuming, obviously, we can only assume. All we know is that he's open to selling some of the team. So is some or some all? We don't know that. I mean, there are so many rumors that are good, bad, indifferent. And Carolyn, I think one of the questions that's logical to ask is, he has retained Bank of America to explore these sale prospects. Bank of America is not one of the two huge banking concerns that have been used to close any recent NFL sales. So the fact that he isn't using one of the two big concerns as this sale leads some in the NFL to think that this is just a trial balloon. He's looking for a minority partner. And I was also told over the last weekend, that the only way that he would be able to get a minority partner is to get one in the same way that Steve Bisciotti became a minority partner of the Baltimore Ravens a couple of decades ago. And that is that there would be a clear path to full ownership. Bisciotti had a clause where if he wanted to, that there was a clear path to buy the team from Art Modell at one point. I forget how many years it was. And I believe that the only way that Daniel Snyder will be able to secure a partner, if this is the way he goes, is if in X number of years down the road, that person be allowed to buy the full team. And Carolyn, I can't overestimate or oversay, and I know you know this, how reviled, how hated Daniel Snyder is in Washington. I mean, it would be as if you were a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles and Jeffrey Lurie said, "I'm going to sell to Jerry Jones." I mean, it is the hatred of Daniel Snyder in Washington is large. And the only way that fan base will be satisfied with this story is if he sells fully.
And yet it's taken so long for us to get to this point, Peter. And the fan base loathing him is one thing. Having a laundry list of alleged behavior that goes against everything that a responsible owner should have is another. And it has seemingly taken him having something on ownership or NFL being pushed past the point of no return here for a change to actually occur. I mean, are you surprised that it's taken this long? It seems almost impossible to get an owner out of this league, barring something really damning for the other owners.
What is interesting to me in our country right now, Carolyn, we're seeing right now, in Washington with the January 6th hearings, it's amazing to me that there have not been charges coming out of either the January 6th committee or the Justice Department based on what happened in Washington on January 6th. What on God's green earth is taking them so long? It's ridiculous. And so I think we are in a period in our country where lawyers and where people who are, how should I say it, people get lawyered up to the point that, Daniel Snyder basically said through his attorneys, I am not going to be available for the House Ways and Means Committee because I will be traveling in Europe for the next 9 months or whatever it was. A total, absolute whitewash, a bullcrap reason for Dan Snyder to not appear before Congress. And so who had to? Roger Goodell. And Roger Goodell, you can just imagine what his emotions were, to take a line of questioning that was meant for Daniel Snyder. But be that as it may, I think it's just that the legal aspect of this is they want to make absolutely sure that they know everything that they can know that went on inside the Washington football team at the time that he's being investigated.
Being put in a position to have to potentially sell a franchise worth $5 billion is a version of punishment in and of itself. But do you think that he will ever be truly held accountable for some of these alleged incidents that took place in Washington?
We'll find out. I mean, Mary Jo White, who was the former U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, and she's a serious player in the legal industry. She's investigating this case for the NFL. I can't believe that she would do it with one hand tied behind her back. I believe it's a legitimate investigation. If she comes up with something, the ESPN reported that she has interviewed the woman who most forcefully accused Daniel Snyder of some form of sexual harassment back in 2009, that he reportedly made a settlement with her for more than $1 million. So ESPN has reported that she was interviewed by Mary Jo White. Good. So let's hear what happened there. And this time, instead of the report being buried, let's have a public report, the same way that happened in almost every other major investigation the league did, except the first investigation that they did of Daniel Snyder.
I know you've covered Tom Brady for a very long time. And I have to admit, I felt a little bit kind of gross the way that everybody has been clamoring for details about the ultimate dissolving of his marriage. We live in a voyeuristic culture and society, as you know. I mean, sports is often an intersection for what's going on outside of sports. And, to watch everybody just sort of try to dig up every detail of their marriage has been disturbing. And to see him sort of be unfocused or just in a place that I think is unique in his career that he's never been in before has kind of just felt really tough to watch. Do you think now that the divorce is finalized, he can maybe move forward and refocus? We saw some of that late game magic, those heroics against the Rams, and you could really kind of see it on the screen, just what that meant to him. Is that ultimately, could that be a turning point in Tampa, what we saw this past weekend?
Two things, Carolyn. Number one, I agree with you. I am not going to be reporting on Tom Brady's divorce. It's not my business. Sorry. I'm not doing it. I'm not reporting on anybody's divorce. It's their business. Maybe that makes me a bad journalist. I guess it does, but it just doesn't feel right. Let's also talk about what happened to Tom Brady this year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, his offensive line stinks. And, his running game, which last year and the previous year really gave him some relief, it has been non-existent. And so I understand everybody's saying, boy, he doesn't look the same and all this. And I get that. And yes, he doesn't look the same. Well, there's a pretty good reason. Okay. His offensive line is in tatters. He's missing one of his favorite teammates that he's ever had, Ryan Jensen, the center. He's missing both guards, including a Pro Bowl guard, Ali Marpet, who decided to retire. Those things matter, and they really matter to an immobile quarterback like Brady. Now, this past week, we saw Scotty Miller drop a pass right in his hands in the end zone. And luckily, that almost cost him the game, but he rescued the game with the 60-yard drive in the final minute. I don't know what'll happen, Carolyn, especially this year in an awful division. They're tied for first with a tiebreaker edge on Atlanta, and they're only 4-5. They go to Munich this weekend to play Seattle. That is going to be a very hard game for them to win. I don't think they're going to win that game. This could be one of those years and one of those rare years where the team that wins that division does it with a losing record.
I've only got time for about one more, so I do want to ask you about the Jets. I mean, living in New York, I know you've been in Brooklyn for a long time, and I'm here as well. I love what's happening to a certain extent with the Giants, but definitely with the Jets. And I love that you started Football Morning in America with a thought from Robert Saleh on just what this New York market demands. Are the Jets for real?
You know, there's a bad cliche about football. And the cliche is great defense travels. In other words, if the weather is crummy and it's windy or whatever it is, that can really throw off an offense. Okay. But for the most part, a great defense should be able to be great in any weather, home, away, neutral, whatever. And to me, the New York Jets have a top 3 or 4 in the NFL defensive front / pass rush. I mean, look at the guy I wrote about in my column the other day. This guy named Bryce Huff played 24 snaps in this game. He's a bit player. And he had a rush against Josh Allen. In fact, he hurt Josh Allen. Not only there was a 19-yard strip sack, a loss of 19 yards, but he also injured Josh Allen's elbow. And not saying that that's great or good for Bryce Huff, but I'm just saying he's the guy who ended up injuring Josh Allen. And he's a guy who doesn't play very much. And to me, it's indicative of the fact that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, when Saleh showed up, he told Joe Douglas, we're going to have a great defense, capital G. I'm making that up. I don't know his exact words. But we are going to build a great defense. And look, Carolyn, we don't know if Zach Wilson's going to be the man. You know, we're all probably a little bit dubious, but I think the legend of Geno Smith shows that you probably don't want to give up on a quarterback midway through his second year in the NFL. So, but whatever happens, any team in the playoffs this year, and I include Kansas City in that, any team in the playoffs this year that looks up and has the Jets on the playoff schedule, they're not going to be saying these are the same old Jets. This is a really interesting, competitive team that doesn't believe what all the so-called accursed fans of this franchise believe, that, oh, you can never give us anything nice. You know, you're going to have some nice things this year, Jets fans.
I'm sure they will hold you to it. Peter King, thanks very much for the time. I know you got to run. I appreciate it.